Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Wander to the Edge. My name is Adam Asher from The Edge of Adventure,
And I'm Zan from Where Gals Wander.
and it is our privilege and pleasure to have each and every one of you joining us today as every Saturday at this time, we have the privilege of getting to know great friends and introducing great friends and great travelers who join us from around the world. And today's no exception, of course. Got a great guest lined up, and we look forward to talking to him. He is an interesting guy, and he's got a great story.
So today we have Tom Thrash, and Tom has made traveling into a sport. He has visited many of the iconic stadiums and places of history, national parks. We're going to figure out how he decides to go to these parks, what sort of drives him, and figure out what his story is.
Yeah, I think he's a guy that not only likes to travel, but we'll find out for sure. But I also think he likes a challenge. So we'll
Ooh,
get to know Tom Thrash right here today. Where?
I'm here to the edge.
So without further ado, let's welcome to the program Mr. Tom Thrash. Tom, great to see you.
Oh, you too. Thanks both of you for having me. I'm looking forward to this.
Was I right at all? Do you also like challenges?
Yeah, it's like, wow, he really has me set up nicely, but that's a good way of putting it all. Yeah.
Well, on this show, we meet people from all different parts of the world, and sort of the thing that ties us all together is that for some reason or another, we love travel, and we love to talk about travel and meet other people who do. So that's definitely one of the characteristics about you that made us want to get you on the program. But the other thing is you have you get your own thing going with this. You are a guy that likes to set goals in travel and meet those goals. So we'll
Yeah.
look forward to.
Some of those goals definitely have been there, kind of since the beginning of my travels. Like after doing a couple trips progressively farther west, and you start saying, well, I've been to, 20 states, 25 states. And then you start saying, well, what would it take to get to all of them? And that becomes a goal. And same thing with Major League Baseball, which you mentioned. I've been trying, working around to get to all the ballparks. And I finished doing that twice, but they keep adding new stadiums. So I have to keep going back and refilling. But it's the same thing. When you're just starting out, you don't really say, well, I'm going to try and go to all, I think it was 24 when I started doing this, 24 ballparks. But you go to all the ones near you, then maybe a trip lets you get to a few that are a little farther away. Maybe a work trip gets you to the other side of the country, lets you get to, like, say, San Francisco or Oakland, that you might not have made that trip for yourself, but all of a sudden that's in your back pocket and you're saying, okay, well, now I'm about halfway there, or now I'm 20, I have 20 of them. And yeah, then it becomes a definite target. And while you're doing that, at least for me, I'm not only working on that goal, other goals started, materializing from that, like, football stadiums. While I was working through the baseball stadiums, there were some weekends where I would get to a football stadium the same weekend. If I was in St. Louis or Minneapolis or whatever, both teams are home, I'd get to both. And so I'm finishing up baseball, and I'm really eager to get baseball done. But now all of a sudden I turn around like, wait, I have half the football ones too. I have to do that. So yeah, they kind of all build on each other.
Don't you think it's true that you really get to know the personality of a town by attending their sporting events? I mean, that's really where they come out and they really define who that place is.
No question. I mean, there are certain things, especially with baseball, like Chicago's always been famous. The Cubs have always been famous for having the fans on the roof. And when you go to a ball game, you see all those people out there and you're like, wow, I'm in Chicago. It's a lot of fun. No doubt about that. But I think it even became more apparent for me, at least with minor league baseball, and not only getting to some big cities that don't have major league teams, but cities like Buffalo or Indianapolis and so forth, and just seeing those smaller cities, and then even smaller towns in Western New York that I might not have ever gone out of my way to visit, but because of their minor league team, I suddenly, wow, there's a lot of, cool little places, cool little towns, a lot of history in these towns I didn't know about that makes you wander a little bit more. So yeah, that absolutely.
So I'm a pretty big baseball fan and have been my entire life. So I identify with this. And I have not been to that many parks, but I have been to a few. And
Mhm.
now you're kind of making me want to get to the rest of them. And what's kind of cool about what you said, the very first thing you said there, is that you didn't maybe start out to get to all the parks or necessarily to all the states,
Right.
but you just try to do a few, you try to do several, and then you realize, hang on a second, I'm getting closer and closer. I could actually set a goal now to get to the rest of them.
That's
And but I think it's important, very
right.
telling and wise to not necessarily start from zero and try to get to 100 real quick, right? But
Oh, mm.
yeah, do
Yeah.
something that's reasonable and get to a few. So, favorite ballpark?
I was hoping you weren't going to ask me
I
that.
know I hate those questions. It's not really fair for me to
Um,
ask.
all right. I mean, I'm a Yankee fan, so I won't be a homer and say Yankees. There is something incredible about places like Fenway and Wrigley Field. Those two ballparks definitely make an impression on you when you walk out there. The old Tiger Stadium did that for me also. Those old ballparks where you know every great player in baseball history played there or walked on that field. It's pretty exciting, and as a fan, it's yeah, it definitely is moving. But for some of the new ballparks, like Baltimore, was one of the first new ballparks that was just kind of a little different, built a little small, a little more intimately in downtown, and that one really worked well. And then the two that always get a lot of votes are Pittsburgh and San Francisco. And I'm not going to argue with any fan that thinks those two are the two best, because they are way up there. They're definitely worth seeing. For
Yeah.
sure.
So,
So I didn't answer your question, but I gave you a bunch.
no, that's good. That's good. Well, what makes me feel good because, of course, I think they all probably have their appeal. But Wrigley Field, when I went to Chicago and saw Wrigley Field, you know, to order the ticket, I knew I was from the very beginning when they're telling you that some of the seats have obstructed views or something, right?
Yeah,
And
I have a few of those.
yeah, but based on I guess where the seats are, but there's just such character, such a
Mhm.
piece of history, and you feel it.
Yeah,
Um,
every big
also,
center field in Detroit.
went to AT&T Park in San Francisco, and that's a beautiful park. And then, of course, the weather there is different depending on the time of year, but it can be quite chilly. And yeah, so it makes me feel like okay, I've seen a couple of the really good ones. Have you been to the new
I
SunTrust
did,
Park?
yes.
Or
Yeah, but got there a couple of years ago. Yeah,
okay,
not the first year it was open, but yeah, I mean, I had finished just a few years older. That was the first time I had to go back because since finishing the 30, a new team opened up a new ballpark. I'm like, now I got to go to Atlanta again. Like, oh, too bad.
I
So
feel like I'm
yeah.
doing too much talking, Zan. I'll be like, but
No,
now
I have a question on behalf of Adam, and maybe you can answer this, Tom. Why are all the sports teams in Atlanta so bad?
Oh,
Zan, you're
uh,
breaking up. Zan,
yeah.
Zan, I didn't hear that.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So,
So,
It's okay. Listen, Tom,
I went to
I'm a diehard Atlanta fan. Look, I didn't choose Atlanta. Atlanta chose me.
last
So
time I
I
went to
love my Atlanta
Atlanta.
teams, but
They beat my
um,
Giants. The Falcons beat my Giants. So like, yeah, I can't trash your teams.
well, I'm a
well, I
Chicago
can because
girl.
it hurts.
Yeah.
Being really good and not being able to win the championship hurts. It does. It does. But we'll come back to that
Yeah.
Yeah.
some other
So
time.
I'm a
So
Chicago girl. So I've been to Wrigley, I've been to Sox, Cellular Field and all that. However, I do not like, other than the Blackhawks, any Chicago teams.
Okay.
I am a Green Bay Packers fan. So you want to talk about history in an amazing stadium, you have to
Well,
tell me if you've been up to Lambeau Field.
that is a perfect segue because
Yeah.
when you asked me about my favorite baseball stadium, I gave you about a half a dozen stadiums. You asked me my favorite football stadium, and I say Lambeau Field. I mean, that's for the reason you said. It was just the only thing that was wrong with my game there was like 70 degrees or something. It was in October, and I figured it'd be at least sweatshirt weather, but no, we're there in t-shirts and but it was a high scoring game. It was like 35-32 or something in that 30 something to 30 something, back and forth. Brett Favre. And yeah, beautiful, just a beautiful old stadium. People parking on the lawns in the neighborhood and stuff. It was a great football day. One of my favorites for sure.
I switched from being a Bears fan to a Packers fan just because of the sense of community, like watching the little kids like ride their bikes up to the practice field, and the players would ride them back, and you just see the entire community come together. And I'm actually a shareholder, like in the Green Bay Packers. Like I'm hardcore fan community. So that I'm glad you gave the right answer there.
also a bit of a bragger.
Yeah, I might have to mute this for all my Giant fan friends who might abandon me or block me for not going with the Giant stadium, but no. Lambeau is the best stadium I've been to.
When I saw a game there, it was in January against the Vikings. And January in Lambeau Field is not fun. I think that the actual temperature was 1 degree and the wind chill was like -20. And that was the coldest I've ever felt, sitting out there for 3 hours on, it's old stadiums, the steel stadium seats, so.
Just sure. Yeah, those hurt.
Yeah.
Zan brought up a great point. When you experience the or a sporting event in the different cities, you get a feeling for the town, and it is a great thing to do when you're visiting, when you're traveling, and you've had the opportunity to do so much of it, and certainly envious of that. What a wonderful thing. Kind of along the line with Zan's question, you brought up the difference between the MLB parks and the minor league parks. Your thoughts in terms of the difference in the experience of a Major League Baseball game and then going to a minor league park?
I mean, you can go to a minor league game and you can pay for parking. You can get a hot dog and a beer. You can get a T-shirt. All that for the price of a ticket for a major league game. It's just so right there. The cost is one of the big advantages. But yeah, there's 30 major league teams in there. There's one. You got 2 in New York, 2 in in the Bay Area, 2 in Chicago. So what is that? 24 cities, I guess. I could be overlooking a couple others. With minor league baseball, I mean, it's going to become fewer teams, I think, next year. But right now, there's 160 teams, so that's 160, different cities in there. Like a lot of the second-tier cities. New York has AAA teams at the highest level of minor league baseball in Buffalo, in Syracuse, and in Rochester. So, it's a good way to see some of the smaller cities you might not normally make as your first destination. If you're traveling across the country, you're probably going to come to New York City. You're not going to go to Buffalo or Syracuse necessarily, but if you have a few other things in Western New York that caught your attention, like say the Finger Lakes or your international parks, you want to visit the Women's History site or something out there that way, you can say, oh, okay, well, I'll go to that site during the day, and then the Rochester Red Wings, I think it is, are home that night, and I'll see a ball game that night. So that's kind of been my MO, just using minor league baseball as kind of a way to, anchor points on a pins on a map when I'm lining up a road trip. Have something planned during the day, and then know I'm going to end the day in the ballpark. Doesn't get much better than that.
I'd be curious, just for the folks watching our article or watching our interview. It's been already a long morning.
She's she's got the blogs. She's always writing these articles. It's okay.
To go ahead and comment and kind of share with us too, like their favorite parks, share with us their favorite experiences. And I'd also be curious just to kind of hear your thoughts and their thoughts, not only about how you get to experience the community when you travel to these sporting events, but sports really brings us all together. Yeah. And that's one thing that really unites us, that gives us a common denominator as well. Yeah. I don't know, Tom, if you have any stories or experiences along those lines that you can share too.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I know some of your recent guests like Scott Jones and Jason Barnett have mentioned Park Chat. That's a Wednesday evening chat that a lot of us do. Last year, we had a meetup. Some of the regulars there set up something for last July where we went to Squire National Park, which was great. But we finished up that day by going down to the town right outside of the park, which has a single-A California League team. And I'm like, I'm so close to that ballpark and they're home. I'm going. Who wants to come with me? And a few of them came. It was great. It was a great way to end the day. get all that nature, see all those giant trees, and then come down and watch a ball game. Nice way to unwind.
So, Tom, I think you mentioned that the universe is frustrating your quest to reach all of the Major League Baseball parks, right? Because it keeps coming up with new parks.
Problem,
Are there two? Did you say there's two that you still need to go to, or how many?
Well, with Major League Baseball, it's the Texas Rangers. They have a new stadium that I need to get to. So
Okay.
I saw them at the old ballpark in Arlington, but I haven't been. They just opened the new stadium this year, so
Okay.
I had plans to go there that were kind of ruined by COVID. And same thing with football. I was just about done, but now LA has that shiny new stadium that I'm very eager to see. And who's the other one with it? And the Raiders moved to Vegas. I mean, how cool is that? So yeah, I mean. I was in Vegas last year, and I wouldn't necessarily hurry back to get there. But for a football game, maybe I would.
I wonder if they're going to stay in Vegas.
That's a good question. I'm sure they're waiting to see how well it goes.
They just built that huge stadium. I've driven by it the last few times I've been in Vegas. It looks amazing. So that'll be interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty expensive ticket from what I gather, though.
Yeah.
So so you're definitely, if you're the only MLB park that you haven't seen yet is the brand new one for the Rangers in 2020 with COVID. I think that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah, okay.
I'd say you're still reigning champ.
Yeah,
and you'll get to this. You'll get to that other park, and that's super awesome. All right, so let's switch back over. We talked a little bit about football.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the best parks for an NFL game.
Like I said, Lambeau was Lambeau. There's nothing quite like it. It's funny. The first maybe 10, 15 years that I was going around to different stadiums, every so often you go to a dome, and domes don't leave a really great impression on you. But the new one in Minneapolis I thought was incredible. The one in Detroit kind of surprised me. That was a very interesting one to me. That was very kind of modern looking on one side and kind of old, almost like an old subway station on the other side. Just walking around the inside of it, I found kind of mesmerizing. So I did like that. Your new stadium in Atlanta, that was quite a sight. That's some remarkable roof. I don't know I don't know how that thing stays up, but that was kind of an interesting to see. I like that. I didn't like the result of the game I went to, but I thought that was a pretty good one. I went to one in Central Texas that I really don't like talking about. So I won't bring that one up. That's an awfully big stadium. I'll say that. It's probably the biggest. I guess that's the biggest one I've been to. But yeah.
So I have a question to kind of take us off topic. Can I do that, Adam? Can I just completely come in here and just blow everything up and go off?
Since when do you ask me? But go ahead.
Yeah, I know. So you mentioned, Tom, that you've met a couple of our other guests that we've had on, Scott Jones and Jason Barnett, that you've met them in person.
Jason, I met Scott, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Okay. So I'm curious, this is kind of new for us. And one reason that we started this was to get to know some of the folks that we chat on social media with all the time. And now you've had a chance to kind of watch our shows.
Yep.
And put some names with the faces. How is it kind of when you see what people look like and how they are? Is it the same as what you imagined, or who's kind of surprised you?
Oh boy. Oh boy, that's a loaded question. I think last year I met maybe 20 people I've known, from social media circles. So who surprised me? Who of our mutual connection? Oh, I don't know. I think everybody is as nice and sweet and friendly as they come off as online. I think the first meetups for me started happening actually with minor league baseball. About 5 years ago, I was part of a minor league baseball network. I mentioned I did some editing for a blog that they had put together. And when I ended up going to ball games, minor league ball games with a lot of these guys, and some of them were younger, kids just out of high school and stuff. So, but that was always kind of fun too. But yeah, no surprises there. No surprises with any of the Park Shot people or just any of the random people that from these circles. But it's kind of funny now that you plan a trip and all of a sudden you're thinking, hey, who's in this town that I have to make sure I reach out to because they'll be mad if they find out that I was there and didn't ask them. And
Yeah.
So it's actually put a little pressure on me too.
Yeah. You mentioned Park Chat a couple of times. Tell us a little bit more about Park Chat and what that's all about.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's big and small national parks all over the country, and they have a lot of fans. There are people that are big fans of the parks in the Pacific Northwest. There are people that are fans of a lot of the historic sites around DC, and then there are just the people that are on quest to see as many of the big parks or as many of the 419 total parks in the park system as possible. So you have a mix of all that with Park Chat. You have people that know a lot more about them than I do, and then there's people that kind of turn to me, asking me for for tips or advice or what I thought of this park versus that park. Wide range of expertise, knowledge, interest, and stuff. It's a great, friendly community, and it's just gotten bigger and I think better over time.
So again, back to your quests and your objectives. All right, we've talked about how you've been to so many, basically all of the MLB parks and NFL stadiums. I think one of the things I was reading about you, you even got to 2 NFL games in the same day one time, I think, right?
That's right. Yep.
Yeah. Thanks to Sunday Night Football, I bet.
It was, and and a little disregard. No, I won't say disregard for the speed limit, but no, it was a Buffalo Bills game. It was early November. Buffalo Bills at 1:00, and then in Pittsburgh at 8:00 or 8:20. So yeah, I mean it was 4 hours and 20 minutes to drive 200 miles, and it just took a lot of things to line up well. It had to be a fast game, and yeah, the Jets kind of ran away with the game. So in the fourth quarter, people were moving to the exits, which kind of made it easy for me to start kind of trickling out with them. Before I went into the stadium, though, I just made sure I strategically parked in the parking lot, like that was pointed closest to Pittsburgh. And they said, Buffalo, the stadium is actually south of Buffalo, which is great because after the game, everybody's going back to Buffalo. Not me. I was going south. I was going down to Pittsburgh. So as I pulled into the first lot, I told the guy what I was up to, and he's like, "Oh, go into the parking lot across the street. You make a right turn out of the lot. You don't have to wait for anybody. A mile down is the entrance onto the highway, and you got a clear run to it." And it just could not have worked, any easier. I mean, I actually stopped at a rest area just to kind of, check my pulse and check the time and stuff and make sure I was still doing that. I ended up, meeting my friend of mine and his kid down there, and they got there just a little before I did. But yeah, what a great fun day it is. Fun day that was. 4.5 hours. I think I got there like around 7:30. I was there for the anthem, and had time to get a beer because I didn't have a beer at the Buffalo game, but I didn't. I felt like I earned the one at Pittsburgh, so I had one, and I was at my seat, for all the opening activities. It was great, crazy day. Wouldn't want to do it too many more times, but I was glad to have that one under my belt.
What a great thing.
Yeah.
So sporting events, stadiums, ballparks. Let's talk now about like Zan mentioned, the national parks.
Mm-hmm.
Has that been something you've also kept up with? Do you know how many of those you've been to?
Yeah, I've been to 44 of the 62 parks, and I think it's about 175 or 180 of the total 419 parks. So yeah, I mean, I'm not really sure I'm going to try and get to every one of them. There's a few that are just look like they're too much of an investment in time or money. Some of those ones in northern Alaska are not too easy to get to. American Samoa, I'd like to say I was there, sure, but I don't know if I'd want to make the effort that it would take to get out there. So I don't know. I mean, I could see myself getting into up to 50 something or whatever, but all of them, I'm not committing to that.
How about food? When we talk about stadiums and food, because you mentioned grabbing a beer,
Mm-hmm.
up here in LA, we have the Dodger Dog, which is famous for everything. Like, what is your iconic favorite stadium food?
I had the best hot dog I ever had was at Charleston, South Carolina. The Yankees have a single A baseball club down there, and they have the Charlie dog, I think it's called. That was, really good. I didn't know what to expect, but I remember really liking that. And the other thing that really stood out to me was the lobster roll at a 49er game. You're in San Francisco, you figure the food's going to be expensive, and you have lobster, it's going to be even more expensive. So, but it was a really good lobster roll.
I was told when I went to the game in San Francisco, I was told by a friend of mine, you've got to get the Sheboygan. And I was not disappointed. And it's the kind of thing you can't get You certainly don't get it down here in Atlanta. You can't get it everywhere. So that it's awesome to experience the culture, the food, the sporting events.
Mhm.
And I'm a detective actually. I can tell you like beer. That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And
Always look for the craft beer stand at the
yeah,
stadium.
tell me about that because you also have set up a quest and objective to reach how many? So what's the challenge that you've
Well,
set?
yeah, I mean, yeah, we talked about the 50 states when we talked sports already, but yeah, after getting to all 50 states once, some of them were just kind of driving through, and I'm like, all right, I need to do something more in each state. And what I ended up deciding to do is like, all right, I'm going to try and get to a sporting event in each site, in each state. And then I even said, well, all right, maybe I'll try and get to a ball game in each state. Football or hockey, that counts. But I'd really like to get to a ball game in all 50 states. I'd like to get to a brewery in all 50 states, and I'd like to get to a national park site in all 50 states. And for all three of those quests, I'm over 40 right now. I don't know if I'll get to all 50, but I think I could see that as something I would push. I think that's a worthwhile goal, no?
It is. It is. And I like how you said you don't just want to have driven through
Yeah,
the state. You want to say you did something. And
yeah,
you got a brewery, you go into a craft brewery. That's a fantastic
yeah.
objective and something to say that you did there. But I know again from looking at your information, the national parks, the sporting events, stadiums, ballparks. Those are things that you like to
Mhm.
go and see craft breweries, and I can see why you and Scott get along.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I saw when he was on, and one thing he forgot to bring up. There's another quest that we're both like, do we really want to do this, or But we ended up pushing each other. And I think we're gonna try and go for it. Yeah, just driving around the country, going state to state. There's 107 different borders between states, and I saw a quest. It was a Facebook thing in one of the groups that I'm in that they talked about that, and people were talking about the different numbers. There were a number of people that had been up to 95, 96, and I'm like, all right, let me see what I've been up to, and I think it was like 82 or 83, and I've only added a couple since then. But yeah, I talked to Scott, and all of a sudden it turned into a quest. So we'll see what happens there. I'm sure he'll win, but I want to do at least one with him. Meet him on the other side of the state line, and then like just shake hands as we're going through it or something.
Kind of cool. Adam,
Yes.
if you could pick one team besides Atlanta, who would you pick?
Why are you doing this to me?
Mm.
What we're talking football?
Because you have to answer. Because if I asked you
Because
this,
I think you already know the answer. That's why I think you do. In football, I have to admit, I always find myself pulling for Green Bay. I like Green Bay.
Yeah.
And I know that Dallas has for so long sort of sold themselves as being America's team, but I've never had any kind of connection with the Cowboys.
Mhm.
But
other
Yeah.
I
Expect to see Ben commenting anytime now.
yeah,
the
but
Cowboys,
I like Green Bay. I do, and frankly, I mean, again, I mean, I pull for my Atlanta teams. It can be historically, it has its frustrating moments.
Mhm.
But no, I like on Sunday Night Football or Monday Night Football. Always like to see Green Bay play, and I also know that Zan is going to be. She's going to be in a great mood if they win, and she's not going to be happy if they lose.
That's
So
why
like,
you
if they
do
lose,
the
just don't even text her about anything. Just worry about it some other time.
Right.
that is very true, actually.
I ask you how you felt about your hockey team coming and going?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Atlanta hockey.
Yeah. So here's the thing. I mean, down here we can't keep the ice frozen. It's hard to keep a hockey team. I did. I mean, I like hockey. I mean, and I think you do too. I mean, I think
Yeah. Yeah.
hockey's
That's
also
not a
one of
full-on
the.
quest yet, but it's not far from becoming one. Right.
Yeah. I mean, it. I like hockey. I mean, and I think that it's a fun event to go to.
It really is.
Atlanta, struggled to support it. But maybe the time will come back around where it works, right? So when soccer, there were a couple of attempts here in Atlanta to get soccer to work, and it never really worked. And then when they said the United was going to come into town for MLS, I have never been more wrong. I said it'll never work, it'll never work, it'll never work. And then there was something sort of magical about the timing for the United and the mix of cultures that we have here. We have a lot of international people. We have a lot of people from Latin countries that of course they tend to love and follow soccer, a lot of Europeans and people from around the world. So we had that influence, and we also had the I think sort of also the people who maybe grew up in Georgia and began playing soccer, right? So you go back 10, 15 years ago, we didn't really have the fan base that had grown up playing it. And then now, yeah, we do. My son, for example, played soccer and he loves the United. And consequently, you got people like me so I'm sort of in that group where we were the age group that failed the soccer teams before, and our group has also gotten excited about them. So you never know. I would love for hockey to be a success. I think it's a fun sport. And so how many hockey arenas have you taken?
10 or 11. 10, yeah. It's funny because I've kind of gotten my friends now doing this questing thing where when the schedule comes out, they're the ones that are looking at it and finding the weekends and how we can get to more than one game. Last year we went up to Montreal and to Ottawa to see back-to-back games. The year before was the first time we did this. We went out to Detroit and then to Columbus, and that was a Friday and Saturday. And the funny thing about that was I would have been content to come home on Sunday, but they're like, wait, we have a Sunday wide open. Let's see if there's a football game we can get to. And that's how I got to one of the stadiums I hadn't been yet. We went to Cincinnati. So it was 3 days in a row of sporting events with two people that I hadn't done that with before. And it was just a lot of fun. And, now I know each year we're going to be picking a new stadium or two to go to. So, yeah, when I said I'm not trying to go to all the hockey arenas, I don't think I am. I'm not that big enough of a fan that I would really, go make that kind of investment to do it. But there are certain hockey places that intrigue me or I want to see more than others. I like to see all the Canadian teams. I kind of want to see all the original 6 teams. I've seen most of those by now. So, yeah, but by the time I do that, now I'm all of a sudden around halfway to all of them. And I start saying, well, since I'm halfway there, maybe I can get up to 20. Maybe I can get up to, maybe I can get the rest of them. I don't know.
Well, when you set out on these quests or you make these itineraries, what really goes into deciding what the challenge is going to be, what the quest is going to be? How do you pick that?
It seems like it's changed over times. I mean, when I first started doing a lot of the traveling that I do, it seemed that some years were focused heavily on national parks, others were focused on baseball, and then I started mixing them. And once I finished baseball or Major League Baseball and started looking at minor league baseball, I kind of use that to, just kind of give me an itinerary. But when you do that, you kind of have to set your schedule around the team. The team doesn't do it around your schedule, of course. So sometimes I might see somebody that looks really perfect, like, oh, this city to that city, to that park, to that park, to that city. And then all of a sudden you realize that team isn't home, and do you change your itinerary, or you just say, well, all right, fine, I'm not going to go to that ballpark on this trip. But usually it's a mix of things. There's usually a few ballparks I want to see, and right now there's still more national parks that I want to see. I think those are kind of the dominant things. Like, all right, last year I hadn't been to Yosemite in 25 years. I had never been to Sequoia or Kings Canyon, so that was kind of an easy decision. And then it was a matter of finding the ballparks around there. I'm trying to get to all 50 states, so Reno has a ballpark. Vegas had a new ballpark. I'm like, all right, there's kind of my itinerary taking shape, and just tried to find a week that worked for all that.
I was supposed to meet up with you in Sequoia last year. You and a bunch of other.
I remember that. Yes. Yeah, I was looking to do that before. This is this is my prop for the.
That's your laser pointer.
Yeah.
This is one of my ski poles for my my ski training machine over here. But yeah. And you took a trip that's on my bucket list. You went across Nevada on the Lonely Highway, right?
I did. I went on the loneliest road in America instead.
I'm trying to do that. And if I'm looking at that and maybe doing that with the Raiders, when I can get to a Raiders game.
Yeah.
But I definitely want to hear more about that. I mean, I read your blog. I thought that was fantastic. And how long did it take you to do?
We did 2 nights, but we made a lot of stops.
Okay.
So we did a lot of the pull-ups, the attractions and stuff. Yeah, it's out on my blog, actually, wheregalswander.com. And I have the whole itinerary listed, but like we stopped and we went in like a native hot spring out in the desert, and we checked out some of the local places. It was pretty cool.
Did you go back the same way, or did you go back?
No, we went out so we flew into Reno and then drove to Ely and went to Great Basin National Park. And then from there, drove to Vegas, flew out of Vegas back to LA.
Nice.
Yeah.
So Tom, what was the moment in time when all this really started? Was there like I'm guessing there probably had to be maybe a trip or something that started all this?
I think it might be the first big trip that I took on my own. It was to see the Giants play on Monday Night Football in Indianapolis. First new car, and just wanted to drive somewhere I'd never been, and you don't really know driving distances. Something's 20 hours away. Yeah, I could drive straight 20 hours, no problem. Of course you can, but but when I did that, I was like, well, all right, if I'm driving to Indianapolis, maybe I could break up the trip. And sure enough, I saw the Browns were home, so I said, all right, fine, I'll go Cleveland on Sunday and Indianapolis on Monday night, and then drive home on Tuesday. It was election day. I forgot if I had off at that point, back then when I did it, but I had a lot of fun. It was a really great trip. Met a bunch of people in Ohio and people at the stadium stuff that I talked to, and just really liked it. And the next year, I planned a bigger trip through the Midwest, going to Wrigley Field. That was a trip I did that on. St. Louis, Kansas City, and Milwaukee. So I did those 4. I set that trip up over like 10 days or something, and it was Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and then Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And I, had to drive home after that, but I had Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday open, and I was in Kansas City, and I remember even thinking like, man, I can go in any direction from here. What do I do? So I'm like, let's just see how far west I can drive. So I drove out to Rapid City, see Mount Rushmore, and ended up driving, not because I knew what a national park really was back then, but on the way back, I saw the exit sign for Badlands, and I'm like, I'm driving right by this. Let's just see what this is. And ended up really liking that. So I think it was the next year then that I started saying, okay, some of these national parks out here, seem really cool. Badlands was awesome, but I've never been to the Rockies. So next year I planned a bigger trip. Only I didn't drive from New York out there this time. This time I flew into Denver and just made a giant trip through the Rockies over 2 weeks, and just seeing everything I can. And then, I'm like, all right, I've gone to the Midwest, to farther in the Midwest, to the Rockies. And what's next? California. So I did that the next year. And then, I've never been down to the Southwest. So, did that, and then just started filling in all the blanks. I could look at a map and see all the different roads I've driven, but sometimes it's those big open areas that you haven't traveled that jump at you. People might say, oh, look at all those places you've been. I'm like, no, look at all those places I haven't been yet. All that is to see out there. And it kind of, motivates me to see more of it.
I love that. I love how you look at the map, and instead of looking at all the places that you've been, you look at all the places that you haven't been.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Yeah. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it has been a privilege and a pleasure to have with us today on Wander to the Edge, Tom Thrash. And now, as you can tell, if you didn't already know him, you know him now, and you see what a great guy he is, how much he loves to travel, and just he loves experiences and challenges and seeing this great country. And it's truly great to have him on the show today. You definitely need to look him up. So here's his information. You'll find him on Twitter. You'll find him on Instagram, and you should follow him. You should follow him, get to know him a little bit more if you haven't already, and see what his next quest is, because I know he's got some things coming up in the near future. Mm-hmm. Where are you headed next, Tom?
Colorado. A couple parks I want to see out there. Two of the national parks, Black Canyon of the Gunnison, and gotta say, I always mix them up. Great Sand Dunes, not white sands, but Great Sand Dunes are on the itinerary next. All
right, so everybody, to follow him, follow along the journey, share in the journey with him. Be sure to connect with Tom. Yep. And again, you'll find him on.
Yeah, recommend breweries, recommend state parks, national parks. I'm eager to listen.
And then also, let him know where you are, because then he'll have to come see you, so you can get mad at him.
That's right.
It is. It's awesome to have you on the show. And now, Zan, um, tell everybody when they can tune in for Wander to the Edge every week.
You can find us every week on Saturday here on Wander to the Edge, and that's on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter.
I'll put the time. There's the times back up on the screen.
There's the time. Well, you had to write it out for me. Just go ahead and say it.
No, that's for me. I did that for me.
Go ahead. No,
Memorized. I did that for me.
So 11 o'clock Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern, 7 in London and United Kingdom, and 8 in France.
And like Zan said, you can catch us on Facebook, also on Twitter, YouTube. Need some more followers, subscribers. How many subs you got? That's when your nephew asks you how many subs you got.
Yeah.
You feel old. But definitely some more subscribers over there. So appreciate everybody's help and sharing and just being a part of all this with us. Yes, ma'am.
We are also about to hit 1,000 on Twitter too.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
Very good. Congratulations.
So it's been the kind of thing that has been very, very well received. And like I said earlier, it's all the love for travel and culture and experiencing these things that kind of ties us all together. But the way we look at it, it's great conversation with great friends, inspiring travelers. So, Tom, you fit into that. So thanks again. Cheers, my friend.
Thank you for having me. Yeah. A lot of fun talking to you guys. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely great getting to know you even better. So we will see everybody else next week right here on Wander to the Edge.